Hi everyone, day 9. We are going to be introduced to a new character today. So, here we go. His name was Nick Jag, and it was his first day of freedom in a long time. He had spent the past 15 years in prison, for he had once committed terrible crimes. This afternoon, having served his full sentence, he had been released. Since stopping for an early supper in a roadside diner, Jag had been headed steadily north. He was not sure where he was going or what he would do when he got there. But he felt in his bones that he must go north. Something seemed to be calling him in that direction, and he walked in the cold rain along the shoulder of the highway. He wore a cheap pair of black shoes, a cheap blue shirt, a white shirt, no tie, and baggy raincoat, all of which he had received in his discharge. He had $100 in his pocket, and his clothes and the $100 were all he owned in the world. Tall, lean, hawk-faced Nick Jag looked dangerous. He could make people uncomfortable just by walking into a room. His gray eyes were almost transparent, cold as ice, and now, at night, they seemed to shine like the eyes of a wild animal. As he walked along the highway, sometimes the rain drizzled down, and sometimes it fell with such a force that it seemed like a dam had burst in the sky. Jack's hair was plastered to his head, and his shoes were soggy, and the skin of his feet had shriveled inside his wet socks. His pants were soaked by the spray from the passing cars. He was thoroughly wet, cold, and miserable, and he'd used his misery to fuel his anger. Jag hated everyone and everything. He hated prison, he hated everyone in it, he hated the world outside the prison, everyone who lived in freedom, he hated the drivers who roared past him without offering a ride. He frequently yelled at them, even though he knew they could not hear him. Jag even hated the drivers who did stop and picked him up. He didn't say mean things, but he would sit in sullen silence in the car, and he would speak only a few grudging words, and he scowled at them when he tried to engage them in conversation. He made them so uneasy that none would carry him more than a few miles. Therefore, he spent most of the afternoon and evening walking in the rain when he could have been riding in comfort. His only reason for living was to enjoy his hatred. He took no pleasure in books or movies or good food or music, found no joy in the beauty of the world, and he never laughed. Without this, he would have turned to dust and blown away. He had served long enough to be given certain privileges. He had passed much of his time in prison in the woodworking shop. The prisoners built simple toys that were given to various charities for distribution to needy children each Christmas. Jag did not like children as much as he did not like adults. He built toys with hidden flaws, wooden cars and wooden dolls that would break only after an hour or two of play. His greatest and only pleasure was that in the knowledge that the children playing with his toys would be reduced to tears when the bright new toys and trucks and wooden-wheeled cars cracked and splintered into useless junk. Last night, in his final night in prison, Jag had experienced a strange, vivid dream about a toy factory. The sign had said, remember? Charin Toys. And he had seen himself busy at a workbench, constructing a clown doll with a wicked gleam in its painted eyes. He had recalled the dream several times today. While drudging through the rain, he was puzzled by it. No other dream seemed so real. Jag was puzzled by his own determination to keep moving northward in spite of the storm. Even with just $100 in his pocket, he could have afforded lodgings in a rooming house or a cheap motel. He had waited until the rain passed, which would have made his journey less miserable. But he was unable to stop. He was compelled to slog on through the storm. He felt as if he were a sliver of iron being drawn northward by some enormous magnet. My future's in the north, he thought. But then he didn't know what his future might be. The rainy highway glistened blackly. Now and then cars approached. Their occupants were invisible behind the glare of headlights and the rain-soaked windshields. Each time he heard an engine behind him, Jag turned and raised his thumb in the classic gesture. Most of the cars sped by him. A few drivers slowed down, but when they got a closer look at Jag, they accelerated again and disappeared into the stormy night. A thin fog appeared like a gauzy cloak on the fields that flanked the highway. Later, there were trees bearded with fog. Jag trudged on. The air grew colder. Jag wondered if the rain would turn to sleet or snow. Then he shoved his hands deep in his pockets of his raincoat and hunched his shoulders over and continued north. And that is the end of day 9. Have a good day.